Thank you, Penny. I want to start off with a straw poll. So by a show of hands, who here likes the idea of being an entrepreneur, setting up your own company? Anyone? Okay, most of you. Brilliant, we're in the right place. Well, listen, I'm going to tell you my story today. I'm going to share it with you. And my story starts off about 5 years ago, when I graduated from the University of East Anglia. And I walked out of UEA with about 20 grand's worth of debt and a lovely degree in philosophy. And 2008 was a wonderful year, as I'm sure you all remember, because that was when the financial crisis started. And I'm going to tell you my story of how in 2008 I set up an internet marketing company with my other half. And if we fast forward to today, it has a £500,000 turnover. We employ 13 people in Norwich offices. Now, this isn't an ego boost for me, to be honest. I've taken a day out, and what this is about is you. I've been to hell and back to set up this business, and I've made a lot of mistakes on the way. But I've also learned some really cool things that I never learned studying business studies at school. And I think if I can share some of them with you today, and you get some ideas as to how you can create wealth, because at the end of the day, you're going to finish at college at some point. You're going to be like me back in 2008, walking out to a strange job market and not really sure what you might be doing. So I'm going to start my story going a bit further back, actually. I'm going to take you right the way back to 1999. I don't know how many of you remember that year. It was a bit strange. Google was in its infancy. It looked like that. And the summer of 1999 was when I decided that I wanted to be a business owner. And the reason being is I had a best friend at school called Jose. And Jose's dad owned bars and nightclubs in Tenerife. Who has been to Tenerife? Anyone? Look at you guys, brilliant. I loved it. And at 15, I had the opportunity to spend 6 weeks working in bars and nightclubs in Tenerife, which was superb. And one day, this is the day I decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur. It was the day of the Charity Shield. Man United were playing Arsenal. And what was really interesting about that day was that I had a bar shift for the game. But before that, Jose and I went up onto the roof and we were just kicking a football about. Now, this is a Spanish roof, but it's flat. And I don't know if you guys remember what satellite dishes were like in the 90s. It looked a bit like that. So me and Jose kicking a football about, we started smacking it against the satellite dish. And as 15-year-old lads, we didn't really think much of it. Until we went downstairs to start our bar shift. And there was lots of English tourists in Tenerife, as you guys are probably aware. And all these punters are coming into the pub, wanting to watch the Charity Shield match. Jose's dad turns on the television, and these are these big old tube televisions you used to get in the 90s. And there was no picture. And the punters were asking, what's going on? Are you showing the football? We decided to confess to Jose's dad that we may have kicked a football against it a few times. That might be the reason. He freaked. He went and got a TV repair person to get up on the roof and fix the satellite dish. And people were starting to leave the pub, and I thought, oh God, what's happening? But just as the game was about to start, the TV came on and they showed the game. Later on that night, Jose's dad walks up to me and he holds a massive wad of notes in my face. And these were sort of Spanish pesetas that they had back then. And said, because of the mistake you may have made, I would have lost £2,000 today. Now, the lesson could have been that I shouldn't kick balls at satellite dishes, but I thought, £2,000? That's actually more than what my dad earns in a month. I kind of said that to him. I said, I'm really sorry about the satellite dish, but that's more than what my dad earns. And he just looked at me and just said, son, you'll never get rich working for another man. Where does your dad work? And I said, oh, he works in a printing factory. You know, he's a manager, he does okay. And it dawned on me at that point that actually, I quite like this idea of earning more money. Because I don't know about any of you guys, but I grew up in a household where this was the narrative. We can't afford it. And we always did okay, but it frustrated me. It's like, why can't we afford it? But beyond the money, the thing that really appealed to me was Jose's dad's ability to be free. he could take Jose and I off into the mountains for 3 days, and the managers would run his businesses for him. And at that point I decided, you know what, brilliant, I want to be an entrepreneur. So you're probably thinking, well, that's really nice, Marcus, 1999, you had a vision and you went and achieved it. Great, thank you. Well, it wasn't always that easy, because 2 years later, I was on a bit of a downward spiral. I found myself addicted to drugs. I was smoking dope every day, I was doing a cocktail of Class A's at the weekend, and I was this close to dropping out of school. And I don't know if you guys ever had an experience where something happens and you just realise I've got to make a change. Well, thank you for the laugh. Yeah, there was one day where me and a few friends, after school, went to a friend's house and started taking drugs. Now, the school had a policy that if you take drugs into school, you're expelled. If you get caught outside of school in school uniform taking drugs, you are expelled as well. That didn't bother us around a friend's house with our school uniform on. And for some reason, I can't remember why, I was stoned in fairness, but for some reason, I decided to leave. I was like, you know, I've probably got the munchies or something, I'm going to go for a walk. And as I left the house, I heard police sirens, and I ran. My friends all got arrested, and they all got expelled. And at that moment, I realised I had to make a change, that I was actually living a bit too close to the wire. And I remembered my goal of wanting to run a business. So I began my education again. And this wasn't necessarily an academic education, it was self-education. Because I used to play the drums. And my drum teacher lent me books on personal development by a guy called Tony Robbins. Some of you may have heard of him. And I started learning about personal development, about wealth creation, and I started setting goals. And the beautiful thing about this time, 2002, was the internet was just taking off. You see, our generation, we don't have a lot of things going for us in some aspects, but we do have the internet. We have at our fingers the greatest library of all time. We have the words from the greatest speakers and the greatest thinkers. And if we invest our time and focus on learning, there's a lot we can achieve. You know, if you go back, if we were in the 70s or something, there was no internet. You just go to your public library. You turn up at a Waterstones, if they had them back then, and try and buy some books on business. We've got so much now. You can go on YouTube and watch people who have done it. You can watch talks like this, potentially. I also did a lot of travelling. I took 2 gap years. I travelled around the world. Some of you guys have probably done a lot of travelling or looking to take gap years. I loved it, and I learned. I did odd jobs to different people, learnt about business, really enjoyed it. And I went to the University of East Anglia, and I didn't study business, I studied philosophy, because I found it fascinating. I thought I'd just follow what I enjoy. But the nice thing about the philosophy degree is I only had 6 hours a week of lectures, which gave me a bit of time for partying, but it also gave me a lot of time to keep learning and reading. So what I'm going to share with you today, because I've read hundreds of books on setting up business, wealth creation, etc. I'm going to think, well, how can I help you guys? How can I condense it into just a couple of points? So I'm going to talk about 2 things that hopefully you might find useful today. One of them is mindset, and the other one is modelling. So one of the books that really stuck with me is a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This was written in the 1920s, and Napoleon Hill, he was commissioned by a guy called Andrew Carnegie. Who has heard of Andrew Carnegie? Anyone? Okay, Andrew Carnegie was the world's first billionaire. He was Scottish. And he went over to America to make his fortune. When he made his money, he came back to England, and it's interesting, any libraries you guys go to, about half the libraries in the UK were built by the Andrew Carnegie Foundation. And he commissioned Napoleon Hill to go out and interview the most successful people of all time. You had Thomas Edison, you had Henry Ford, who set up Ford Motors. And Napoleon Hill put these into volumes at the end of each year. These were known as the volumes of success. And he sold them all and made a good living. Then 1929 hit, the Wall Street crash. Napoleon Hill lost all his money. So what he did is he took the 20 volumes of success he'd written, spent 5 years pulling out the best nuggets of what all the entrepreneurs had said, and he put it into one book. And that's Think and Grow Rich. And it's interesting, a study was done, and it's the most cited book today by the world's entrepreneurs as something that's influenced them. The wonderful thing about Think and Grow Rich, it's free on the internet now. It's gone past a certain time now, it's free for any of you guys to download today if you want. So let me share with you one of the nuggets from Think and Grow Rich. It's quite a simple one. It's about persistence. That the only way to truly fail is to give up. And let me tell you 3 stories that underline that. I'll take you back to 1962. There were 4 guys. They were young musicians. They were in a band, and they were driving down to London. They'd try to get a record contract, and all the major record companies had said no, apart from one. And this was their one shot. And they went down to London, and they played their heart out. And at the end, the record producer came out, and he just looked at them and said, "Sorry, lads, I don't think you've got what it takes." And anyway, it's 1962. Everyone knows guitar bands are going out of fashion. You could have heard a pin drop. One of the members of the band looked at the others and just said, "Should we throw in the towel?" I want to take you to 1919. After the First World War, a young American soldier comes back to America. He has a strange hobby. He loves drawing, he loves doing cartoons, and he goes around all of the newspaper proprietors in his hometown in America. And he says, "Here's my portfolio, do you have a job for me?" And each of them slammed the door in his face. And after all of them had said no, he sat down on a park bench, he looked at his portfolio and thought, would anyone want to see his cartoons? Now the final story, I want to take you to the 70s. Now I was born in the 80s, not the 70s. I've got no idea what happened then. It looked a bit strange, judging by that graphic. I'll take you to a classroom in the 70s. I don't know if any of you have ever had a teacher pick on you in your classroom. I don't know if anyone's had that. You felt singled out by a teacher or a lecturer. Well, in this particular classroom, there was a guy, and the teacher picked him out and just said, "What do you want to do when you're older?" And he was quite a shy guy. He said, "Actually, you know what? I'd love to be a business owner." And the teacher just scoffed at him. So, "Come on, you can't be a business owner. You can hardly spell. Look at you." The whole of his classmates just laughed at him. At those points, all of the people could have given up, but they realised something. And this is a quote from Think and Grow Rich, that failure cannot cope with persistence. And it's a good thing too, because as you probably guessed, the 4 guys in the story about the record contract were the Beatles. The cartoonist in our story, as you may have guessed, his first name was Walter, last name Disney. But here's the interesting one. Who was the 3rd kid in the story? He was a guy called Timothy Martin. Has anyone ever heard of Tim Martin? Show of hands? You have, one person. Timothy Martin owns the biggest chains of pubs, bars and restaurants across Europe. But he didn't name them after himself. He named them after his teacher. And his teacher's name was J.D. Weatherspoon. I just love to think of his teacher walking around the world and just seeing his name everywhere on pubs. Here's the thing. If you're serious about setting up a business, it's going to be incredibly challenging. And why I'm talking about mindset is you have to be able to deal with setbacks and temporary failure. And when times are tough, I remember the words of Winston Churchill, "When you're going through hell, keep going." The funny thing is about life that I've learned is you always see what you're looking for. I couldn't even spell that, but yeah, you always see what you're looking for in the world. And let me just do a little experiment just to prove this to you. I'd like you now just to look around the room and take about 30 seconds just to count how many blue things you can see, just quickly. I'd like everyone now to close their eyes. That's great, everyone's doing it, superb. And I'd like you to think about how many red things you saw in the room. You see, the thing is, you can't really do it. Some of you might have been able to. But here's the beauty, is if what you're looking for in the world, you'll see more of. So the more you're looking for business opportunities, the more you'll see. You take someone like Richard Branson walking down a street, reading a newspaper, looking at a website. He's going to look at the world in a very different way from the guy selling newspapers on the street. And that's the beauty. If you get in the right mindset, if you start looking for the right things around the world, you'll be able to see them. It's not that they're not there, it's not that you can't do it. The world's full of possibilities, I learned that. And what's actually brilliant is, let me show you this chap. Who knows who this guy is? Anyone? None of you? This is Sir Isaac Newton. He came up with Newtonian physics. He essentially invented gravity, although gravity existed. He coined the paradigm of Newtonian physics. The nice thing about him is that everyone said, look, you're a genius, you count with gravity, this is incredible. And he said, no. The reason I can see so far is because I'm standing on the shoulders of the giants that came before me. And I think that's true of our generation. We're standing on the shoulders of humongous giants. We have so many opportunities out there if we can learn to see them and learn to find them. Can I ask you guys something? Has anyone got a £2 coin on them? No? Are you shaking your head? No. Someone's got a £2 coin? I'm going to do a whip around in a minute for my taxi fare out of here. No. Okay, if you look at your £2 coin, it has on it, standing on the shoulders of giants. It's there to remind us every time we're paying for things that actually we're incredibly lucky living in this time, living in this country with all of the possibilities that are out there. So you probably think that's great, Marcus, okay, positive thinking, great, I'll work hard, I won't give up, that's great. How do you do it? How do you set up businesses? How do you make money? The second thing I want to talk about is modelling. You've got the mindset, and then you've got to model. You've got to find what other people are doing, because the thing is, it's actually not necessarily about intelligence, it's just about finding a strategy that works and implementing it. The second book I'm going to share with you guys today, which is the second most cited book by entrepreneurs as something that's inspired them, is a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. Show of hands, who has seen or read about Rich Dad Poor Dad? Anyone? One person? Two? Okay, brilliant. This will be really useful. This guy over here is a guy called Robert Kiyosaki. He tells a story about his two dads. His poor dad, who was his father, and his best friend's dad, who was rich. And he copies the strategies of his rich dad, and he's now a billionaire. And I'm going to share with you his main teaching. It's called the cash flow quadrant. And this was never taught to me in school. This was the one thing that actually inspired me to think, actually, I can create multiple streams of income, I can create wealth. And it shows you that there are 4 ways to make money. So when you graduate your courses, you can actually choose one of these paths. Let me show you. There are 4 ways to produce income. You've got 4 options. You can be on the left-hand side of the quadrant, which is where 95% of the population reside. You can be an employee. You're trading your time for money. You can get paid £10 an hour, £20 an hour, but there's only a limited amount of hours in the day. There's only so much you can earn as a result of that. But you can be self-employed. You can charge a higher rate. You can charge £25 an hour, £50 an hour. But once again, you're trading time for money. There'll always be a cap on it. Where 95% of the wealth resides is on the right-hand side of the quadrant. You can be a business owner. You can own a system. You can trade other people's time for money. You can own a business that where you step away from, it gives you revenue. Your time doesn't matter at that point. I have 3 companies that I have equity in, and we're systemizing them. And one of them I can walk away from, and I still get paid. And you can set up as many of these as you have time to do. And the final one is investor. You're trading money for more money. The beautiful thing about money is that it never wants holidays. It works 24/7 and it never gets tired for you. And you're probably thinking, well, that's nice, Marcus, great. I can't be an investor, I've got no money. Well, 5 years ago, I had 20 grand's worth of debt. So I started off as an employee. That's where we start, that's where we learn. But I quickly moved into self-employed, and now I'm moving over to business owner. But the system that we've been taught in school, the system we grow up with, is known as the 40-40-40 method. You work 40 years of your life for 40 hours a week, and most people retire with only 40% left of their income that they get on a regular basis. And this is fine, because actually it requires less responsibility in a way. There's less risk on some level. And that's fine if people want that. I'm not advocating that you should all be business owners if you don't want to. But at the very beginning of this talk, most of you here put your hands up and said, yeah, I'd love to be a business owner. The beautiful thing about running businesses and having investments is you get what's known as passive income. Passive income is where it happens whether you're there or not. You don't have to turn up to work, essentially. The business runs itself for you. But the problem is, if I just have one business that gives me a passive income, What happens when that business goes down? If I go off on holiday for 6 months, brilliant, go travelling around the world. If my business is in trouble, then I have to come back and start working in it. I become an employee of my own business. So what you need, if you want financial freedom, if you'd like to retire at 40 or 35, and that is possible, I've met people who are doing it, I'm on my way to doing it, you can retire early, is you need multiple streams of income. Now I heard this at a seminar and I thought, multiple streams of income, this is completely alien to me. How does it work? Well, I've put together my strategy that I'm going to share with you now, how I'm making multiple streams of income. This is not to be arrogant to say, oh, I'm doing really well. I've had to work intensely hard to learn this stuff, make a lot of mistakes, live on the breadline for a bit, but I'm on the way to achieving this now, and I'm only 29. 10 years ago, I was at West Kent College, and I was trying to sort out my A-levels so I could get to university. In a decade, I'm now here, and I'm moving closer to where I want to be. So let me share this with you. This is a smug picture of me in the middle, and on the right-hand side, here are 3 businesses that I have equity in. And I'm building these businesses up, and I'm growing them so that I can walk away, so I don't have to be there. And they'll give me a residual income, they'll give me a passive income, maybe 2-3 grand a month, that'd be lovely, that's what the plan is. At the bottom there, I've got my savings. I don't need much to live, to be honest. I don't have lots of flashy things. Season ticket at Carrow Road's all I need, so sorry to you Ipswich fans in the audience. I'm also getting into trading. I trade Forex, and actually after this I'm going to a property seminar where I'm learning from people, 2 people in their 30s who have 6 properties in Dereham that they rent out, and the positive cash flow from those properties gives them £1,500 a month passive income. That sounds brilliant to me, because you've got people paying off mortgages on properties under their name, and you're getting residual income. That's my goal, that's my strategy. And I'm sharing that with you because no one ever shared that with me when I was at school. When I was at college, no one shared that with me. And I hope that some of you find it useful. The final concept I'll give you, which actually meant a lot to me, is that time is like money. You can invest it or you can spend it. Now you're investing your time by getting involved with Enterprise Week, by listening to speakers, by being involved in projects. That's an investment of time. Watching TV and going up the pub is spending time. Now, I'm not against either of those, I do that a fair bit. But you can just get home every day and just spend 8 hours watching TV. If you just invested a couple of those hours into reading and learning and actually looking for strategies, improving your mindset, there's a chance you could be really wealthy. So you might be thinking, okay, Marcus, you've given us all this, these ideas and theory, but how did I actually do it? So let me just run through my story just to give you actually something to grab hold of. How did we do it? So 2008, I graduated with a philosophy degree, 20 grand's worth of debt. And I had a plan. I wanted to set up a property development company because everyone knows property prices always go up. It's solid. And you could get loads of cheap credit back in 2007, so that was my plan. And then I graduated and oh dear, I've got a philosophy degree, a lot of debt, and property's not an option anymore. So I had to start again. So I kind of thought, well, what can I offer? I've read a lot of these business books, that's great. And I've got a philosophy degree, right. And I speak a little bit of Spanish from when I lived there. Okay, that's not useful. So I thought, what's my philosophy degree actually given me? Well, it gave me the ability to write really well. So I thought, okay, maybe I can sell my services writing. There's a really interesting quote from a guy called Zig Ziglar. He says, if you can help many people get what they want, you can always have everything that you want. And that stuck with me, so I thought, well, how can I help a lot of people with writing? So I went out and served, and I started practicing copywriting, and I learnt about persuasive writing, using psychology to sell things. I thought, if I can help people sell stuff, then I can get a cut, essentially. So that's what I did. I offered my services for free, and I went out. I'm going to tell you a quick story that Zig Ziglar tells, because it's quite interesting. It actually always stuck with me. He talks about in the recession in the 90s, there was a boy on his street who was 16, and he wanted some money, he wanted a job, but there were no jobs out there. And he said to his mum, can I borrow some money? And she said, no. I'll tell you what you're going to do. You're going to take this lawnmower, and you're going to go out, and you're going to mow all the lawns of all of the neighbours. And he said, well, no, I don't want to do that. They're going to tell me to go away. She's like, no, you're going to do it. He was quite scared of his mother. So he went out and started mowing lawns, and people came out and said, hey kid, I'm not going to pay you for this. He's like, no, it's fine, I'm just doing it for my mum. But out of the 30 houses on the street, 5 of them said, here you go, here's $20, here's $30. And actually, I've got some more jobs if you fancy doing some more handiwork. That kid made more money that summer than he would have done had he got a job in a shop. And it just reminded me that if you go out and serve, if you look where people's problems are, and you take the initiative, don't wait for there to be a job online or a job in the newspaper, go out and solve people's problems, you'll always be able to make money. So copywriting was what we did initially. And I went networking. I met people like Brian, who's speaking afterwards, and he was a great mentor to me. There were some really great people in the business community in Norwich that helped us. We did a lot of free work, a lot of pro bono stuff, just to help get our names out there. I went to seminars. I learned from other copywriters. And what got really interesting is I started doing good copywriting. People said, this is great, but you're writing for my website, and it's not getting found in Google. Can you help me? I said, well, let me figure this out. So I started learning about search engine optimization and pay-per-click, how to dominate Google. The way I learned is I found the best people in this part of the country. I rung them up and said, look, I'm a copywriter. Can I write some copy for your website and for free? And then could you tell me all of your secrets? Could we do a trade up? Could you tell me your stuff and I'll show you mine? So then I found the 5 or 6 best people. I got all their strategies. I put my own learning on top. I started offering a service that was more effective than theirs. And in 2009, Fountain Partnership was born. Me and my other half, Rebecca. And we were working from a kitchen table in a shared house with a cat. And that was it. We shared a laptop. That was, we were struggling. I'll mention this very briefly because I was down on the agenda here as an enterprise politician. A lot of places I practiced my marketing skills were in the local politics scene in Norwich and Norfolk, and I actually ran to be a county councillor. It's not a particularly well-paid job, but I did it because I found it really interesting. I did it for 4 years, and I stood down in 2013. I stood down because I wanted to focus on my business. But if anyone wants to talk politics at the end, come chat to me. I can talk about it till the cows come home. So 2010. The thing that made a difference is actually I realised if we get more people on board and split the pie more ways, it's not good in the short run, but it's great in the long run. So we got a really good sales consultant on board, a friend of ours who was incredible. And he started bringing in contracts that paid for both me, Rebecca and him, and enough to take someone else on. And we took on someone else who was very talented at pay-per-click. So then there was 4 of us, grinding away, living hand to mouth. The annoying thing about being self-employed is people pay their invoices when they want to, not when your rent's due. That was pretty tough. But we kept working hard on the premise of return on investment. If you give me £1,000 a month, I will make you back 5. And I live and die on that. But as soon as I make them back 5 grand, they go, oh, can I give you a couple more grand and you can make me 10 or 15? Sure, let's give it a go, let's try that. And that's how we grew. And we started getting more and more contracts. We took the company limited. We got commercial premises and we started hiring people. And that's a whole challenge in itself. So I thought, oh, I'm a nice guy, I get on well with people, but actually management is a skill, you have to learn it. So right the way back to reading books on management, learning and trying to improve my game there. And now we get to 2013. Moving into new offices in the city centre, there's 13 of us, we've got £500,000 turnover. And the most important thing about what I'm doing with all of this is I'm systemising and putting in processes. What that means is that there'll be processes and systems so that the business can run without me being there. I'm extracting myself from it. So that in a year's time, I can turn up once a month, meet with my managers, they'll tell me how things are going, and then I've got the rest of my time to focus on my other projects, or take a month off. And we started doing that. Last year, Rebecca and I, we took 5 weeks off, rented a car and drove around America, and it was incredible. But I'm not saying that to boast, because actually 2 years before that, we're living on the breadline, hand to mouth, not being able to afford enough to eat. So we kind of earned that, but that's the way we're going. So what are you going to do about it? It's back to you. I said at the beginning, this talk is about you. It's not necessarily about me talking about my story, I know that. It's about me sharing some concepts with you guys, and hopefully some of them will be useful, some might not. The 2 M's. If you can take away just one thing from this, improving mindset and modelling strategies that work, a great way to get involved in business. And I invite you now to set a goal as well. Because if you don't set goals, you say, yeah, I'd like to be a business owner someday. Someday's not on the calendar, to be honest. Set a goal. So you know what? In the next month, I'm going to read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm going to read Think and Grow Rich. Set a goal. Try it. And start now. It's much easier to start a business when you've got nothing to lose. It was so easy for me to do it as a graduate, 20 grand in debt, because I had nothing to lose. I haven't got a house to take away, I don't have a car, I've got nothing. The people that waited a lot longer go, I'll do it when I'm in my 40s. You can have a house then, you've got a mortgage, you've got kids. It's much harder to start later on in life. Start now. People say, I want to wait for my ducks to get in a line. Your ducks are never going to be lined up. Show of hands. Who here are smokers in the room? Smokers? Some proud hands, very good. Okay, now for the smug faces. Ex-smokers? These smiling, smug faces. Ex-smokers will tell you there's never a perfect time to quit. I thought, you know what, I'm just going to give up smoking when I'm not that stressed, or, you know, when Norwich are doing well, which never happens. You know, all these things. And actually, you just got to stop. You've just got to start now. With your business, with smoking, just do it now. Just to wake you guys up. How many days do you think it takes to live an average life? How many days have you got? If you were to live to 80, how many days do you think it is? Just throw out some numbers, anyone? Mathematicians getting their calculators out. Throw a number, someone. There was a study done. Do you know what the average answer was? 1 million. 1 million days you get in a life, apparently. But what do you guys think? 1 million, half a million? 50 million. 29,219 days. That's all you've got if you're going to live to 80. People live their lives with their dreams if they do have 1 million days. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll start this tomorrow, I'll go to the gym tomorrow. No, actually, the clock's ticking. But here's the nice thing about it. People totally overestimate what they can do in 1 year. But they seriously underestimate what they can do in 10. And take you back, 10 years ago, I was dealing with a drug addiction, I was at West Suffolk College trying to sort out my A-levels. And now, I run a limited company, £500,000 turnover, staff, life's a lot better, and I've got a plan, and that's where I'm going. So, I hope you found that entertaining, useful. Who knows? I don't know, Penny, I've got a couple of minutes for Q&A. If anyone's got any questions, if not, come chat to me afterwards, because I know it's a bit embarrassing sometimes just to shout out a question across the corridor. Anyone? Mr. Bush, yes. The most important piece of advice would have to be getting a mentor. Being around someone who's done it before. When I was at uni, I parted with £1,300 on a credit card to go on a wealth dynamics course in London, and my housemates thought I was nuts. They said, think of the size TV you could get with that. But I want to spend a week in a room with millionaires. And that helped me so much. So the way to do it is just to meet people who are doing it. Because at the end of the day, it's not that they're better than you, just they've got a better strategy. That's all it is. It's nothing personal. And if you can copy their strategy and be proactive, then you can do whatever you want. Is that useful?
I've got a question.
Go for it, Benny.
Risk.
Risk.
What is your approach to dealing with the risk? You said that you had nothing to lose.
Yeah.
But say some of these people who've been going along a certain path, what would you say about risk? I've had this conversation with Brian in the past, with some people who will take a risk and some people who don't like to take a risk.
Here's the thing to know. You're all going to fail. You're all going to have temporary setbacks and failures. That's guaranteed. But there are failures that steer you and failures that sink you. So if you take out a massive loan, if you take a £100,000 loan and put it into a business project that you haven't even tested out, then you're likely to lose a lot of money and be in debt and potentially go bankrupt. But you can start small. You can minimise your risk. I started off without any overheads at all. We didn't borrow any money to set up Fountain. We didn't have any. So we went out and we met with our potential customers. We offered free work. They liked it. And then we knew we had a proof of concept. So we did make mistakes. What we offer now is very different from what we were offering. But it is about just taking calculated risks. Don't put your eggs in one basket. Know that you are going to have temporary setback and failure. That's what happens to everyone. That's how you learn. Tony Robbins says a really interesting thing. He says, how long would you give your average kid to, when it's learning to walk, to just give up on it? Well, no one ever gives up on learning to walk. You just keep encouraging the kid until it learns. But you don't put it walking on the edge of a building. It might fall off. So it's just being really calculated about risk. But I think the biggest risk, to be honest, is doing nothing, to be honest.
Do you ever get scared?
Every day. I get scared all the time. And that's the thing, actually, being involved, running a business is, you have to learn to be certain in the face of uncertainty. And I thought it'd be easier when I had staff, be like, yeah, it's great, worst case scenario, I have to fire a few. I love my staff, they're my friends now. I always want to work harder just to keep them all, it's really tough. And the more responsibility you have, the more staff you have, the bigger the risk, the bigger the loss could be. So yeah, I do get scared, but that's what happens, you get scared doing everything. It's scary chatting to you guys now. Public speaking isn't the most easiest of things, but you just go for it, and worst case scenario, you learn something.
I was going to ask one more question. So, you said about 80 years to live. So, is your goal not to work? Is it just money to work for you?
Yeah, so what I want is financial freedom. So, by 2020, that sort of little graph I showed you with all the arrows, that image, I want that. So by 2020, if I just want to spend all my time travelling the world with my kids, or if I want to just play five-a-side football every night, or whatever I want to do, I want to have that freedom. The problem is when you get involved in business and being an entrepreneur, actually that changes you. So you really start enjoying what you do. You love wealth creation, you love coming up with new projects, you love doing things like this. So actually I'm never going to be on a golf course all day every day because I wouldn't be happy. Do you know what I mean? So actually, yes, whilst I want to have the ability, so if I don't need to work, then that's fine, and I want to be comfortable, but the chances are I'll probably do projects that I enjoy, and that goes back to the thing about freedom that Jose's dad had. It's just the freedom. I don't really get on with my bosses when I was an employee. I really found them quite annoying, so I quite like not having my own boss. The problem is that the responsibility is on me. If I don't go to work, if I don't work hard, then I don't get paid. I'll be 36, yeah. That's the goal anyway, but we'll see.
Any more questions, guys? Right, can we give...
Oh, there's one over there, sorry.
Have we got a question?
So the question was, what's the number one thing I look for in hiring? Standing out from the crowd, being different. So let me tell you a very quick story about the best job application I ever had. So I turned up at the office one day and there was a brown envelope stuffed under the door. And it had the name Rob on it. Rob's the sales guy that's one of the co-directors, and he's in charge of our recruitment. And I opened it up and there was a professionally printed flyer in our branding and our colours. So, and it just said alicerose.co.uk. I was like, wow, well, let's go to alicerose.co.uk, see what this is. And there was a website in our colours and branding again, saying, hi Rob, you obviously got my flyer. And then it just had a whole section, which was her cover letter. And it just had a big button saying, click here to download CV. And that was incredible, that just stood out. It didn't really cost her much to do. She was friends with a printer who printed it for her. And compared with all of the other job applications I get of the sense, it's just an email saying, dear sir, please find attached my CV. That stood out so much better. And it's just doing things like that to be different. And the other thing I would say though, in terms of jobs, just pick up the phone. Because I've never, and all the time we've been hiring, I've never had someone pick up the phone and just chat to me and say, essentially, could I have an internship, could I do some free work, anything. Everyone just sends an email, they hide behind the keyboard. The problem is by sending the emails, you're going to be like all the other people applying for the job. So my number one tip is to stand out.
Yeah, no, that's good advice actually. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow when we talk about internships. What is your view on internships?
I think internships are brilliant. We had a guy from the UEA, a second year student, he did a 6-week internship with us. We've actually given him a part-time job now. The beautiful thing about internships is actually you become indispensable to the company. You start working on projects and then if you leave, they'll be like, oh, we really would like to get them back part-time or something. And it allows both parties to try each other out. So I'd highly advise doing internships because the thing is, you don't want to apply for a job which you think is your dream job. You turn up there and it's not what you hoped it would be. So actually, internships allows both parties to test each other out.
Okay. While you're on about recruitment,
All right.
because bear in mind we've got an audience who is very much going into recruitment, whether it's in the next 2 years or whether it's in June next year, second year students, or after university. Can you just talk a moment on the skills? You've been quite honest in how you were as a young man. What skills do you think they need to be able to demonstrate to any employer?
Okay, here's an interesting thing. So my dad always said to me, he goes, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. That didn't really help me because I didn't have the confidence and believe that was the case. I was actually pretty bad at interviews, if I'm honest. I messed up quite a few of them, which is partly why I went into actually being setting up my own business. Having said that, I'm now sit on the other side of the table, so I get to see what I would find interesting. Just the skills. It's a difficult one because you've got an idea in your head as an employer as to what you want, what's the ideal candidate, and it's very hard to actually get that out because what people put in the job description isn't normally the case. I think the best thing to do is to look at the company, look at their website, potentially ring someone up, speak to someone in the company, do something a little bit different, try and really understand what the company's looking for, and then the skill set that you could do. But the thing is, be honest as well, though. I mean, if you don't think the skill set's right, just say, look, I know you're looking for this, but actually, here's what I'm really good at, here's what I'm passionate about. And if that comes across, we've had people say, actually, you know what, I'm not that good at writing, but I really love analytical things. And I say, you know what, right, you might be right for this position, but I've got one coming up in a few months, and actually, you'd be perfect for it. So actually talk about what makes you come alive, because I think what employers want are people who are passionate, who come alive, and that's what you'll be good at, because you'll be enjoying it.